Hello, and welcome to FrostBytes, where logistics and tech meet a fresh perspective. I'm your host and head of marketing at PAXAFE, Ivan Castro, and today I have the honor of speaking with our guest, Jon Chapman. Jon is Vice President of Healthcare Services at Kuehne+Nagel, located at Kuehne+Nagel's corporate headquarters in Switzerland. In his position, he is globally accountable for customer experience and is responsible for the operation of their multimodal healthcare services portfolio and the delivery of new products and solutions based on industry trends, future customer needs, and tech innovations. Prior to joining Kuehne+Nagel, Jon had 20 years of experience at AstraZeneca in roles across engineering, manufacturing, and procurement. We're excited to have him on today for him to share his personal insights and opinions on the future of cold chain logistics. Welcome to the show, Jon.
Hi, Ivan. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. It's wonderful to have the opportunity. Like you, Ivan, I'm looking forward to talking to you and helping our audience understand a little bit more about the supply chain, about cold chain logistics, building on the experiences that I've had during my time working in the industry.
Jon, before we touch upon that fantastic background, we want to start with a shock to the system and what we call Jon's hot take. What's an opinion that you have about the cold chain logistics industry that you think others might find controversial or contrarian?
That's a wonderful place to start. I like the idea of a hot start. As the people who know me will know, my background is in engineering and technology. So from my perspective, I don't feel that we place enough value on real-time monitoring and intervention within the supply chain industry. We're far more focused on prioritizing the cost of the service. We're far more prioritized in making sure that we return value than making sure that the total cost is considered. So I would really value the industry and all of my peers and colleagues thinking about the total cost of ownership, and particularly therefore considering the product that's not able to be sold, or in my case in healthcare, not fit for human consumption because it's been damaged or tainted in transit.
Now, maybe the answer is obvious, but why do you think that's a controversial point of view?
I would say, from my perspective, that's perhaps a little bit controversial because we all know that money talks. We all know that we have to return an investment to our shareholders or to our stakeholders. So the idea of potentially investing strategically, spending a little bit more money today in order to overall, whether that be in a 3-month period, a 6-month period, save some money, return an amount of the cost to the stakeholder is perhaps a little bit difficult to get used to. I think, yes, some parts of the industry are more capable of understanding the concept of investing now to save later, but we generally have, as a human race, a very short-term view of things. So I think for me that's probably why it's most controversial. It's going from the short-term view to the longer-term strategic view.
Yeah, Jon, I've seen that too myself, that sometimes those cost pressures seem to be what jumps to the forefront, and we might forget about the long game and focus on just getting through today. I think that's a great point of view, and I agree that some people could really find that contrarian because they really want to focus on cost up front. Now, Jon, I want to switch gears here now and talk about your journey. So you've had this great journey across not only pharma, but now in the logistics space. Tell me a bit about your journey and what have you learned across cold chain and logistics through it?
So I think, Ivan, in terms of, let's say, a highlight of my CV, you covered that in the introduction, but just adding a little bit, which sort of, I suppose, indicates the position and the direction that I come from. So first of all, I was trained as an electrical engineer. So my background at school was within the sciences and mathematics. I was always fascinated about how things worked. And one of the stories that I know my mother gives to me, the electric plug, the plug socket that you use to put the items in the wall at home. Apparently, I was taking those apart and putting them back together at the age of 3 and 4. So I've always been fascinated in terms of how things function, how you can make things better. And that led me to doing my first professional positions actually within a chemical company called ICI in the UK. I then moved, due to the growth of the expansion of ICI, or actually the splitting of ICI into ICI and Seneca, into the pharmaceutical industry. And there I was involved with, I would say again, building upon my engineering credentials, project engineering, operational maintenance, both on the API side, so the raw materials, and within tablets, within manufacturing. I found that fascinating in terms of both the complexity of the equipment that I was handling, and also making sure that everybody that was working there was safe, and we had systems to ensure that the product was protected from any contamination. I don't know if this is a surprise or not, but I decided after having done that for a while that I didn't want to remain an engineer for all of my life. And I actually come, as some of you will probably recognize from my voice, from Northern England, from Yorkshire. Yorkshire people have a keen sense of value. That's the way we like to put it, at least. So I became interested and fascinated with procurement. So I started, first of all, involved with the procurement of the equipment that I'd been maintaining within the tablets manufacturing. And then AstraZeneca, who I was working for at the time, wanted to increase the scope of procurement into logistics and transportation. I put my hand up and said, yes, I'd like to get involved with that, because again, another interest I've always had has been the outdoors, whether that be cycling or walking in the mountains. So maps and moving things about has always been interesting to me. So I became involved with logistics. You can probably start to guess what I'm going to say now, that Kuehne+Nagel became one of my suppliers. Like, I actually introduced Kuehne+Nagel into AstraZeneca at the time. Kuehne+Nagel was keen to grow and develop into the healthcare logistics, or pharmaceutical logistics, as we called it at the time. So my supplier became my employer. That was 14 years ago now. I moved over from the UK to the Kuehne headquarters in Switzerland, as you've described. And I was instrumental, or have been instrumental here, in developing first of all, our air pharma product for the transportation, the storage, the distribution of healthcare products. And then more recently, that's been expanded into all modes of transportation, including warehousing. And we've expanded from pure pharmaceuticals and vaccines into the other areas of medical devices, medical technology, animal health, and consumer healthcare. And so I would say, what have I learned from that? That there are certain things that are transferable, there are certain things that are common, and there are also new things, new ideas that you need to bring in based upon the particular requirements of the product, the particular needs in terms of transport time, transport complexity.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that taking apart and putting together of the electrical panels. I think if there's something as complex as that, it's probably cold chain logistics, and it looks like you had a really good background early on to help you prepare for that. I'm curious, as you left pharma and went into Kuehne+Nagel, were there things that you saw on the Kuehne+Nagel side that you would want to share back with your pharmaceutical partners as learning on the Kuehne+Nagel side that can help pharma actually either engage better or provide better requirements so that they can get better results?
I think you're in the main answering the question with your question there, Ivan, that if I'm thinking about what we need as a logistics service provider, it's really, really important that we understand the priorities of that medication, of that SKU. Is it a product that is really dependent on quality? Is it a product where the service level is really, really important? Or is it one where the price is really sensitive? Is it a product that is patient critical, where failure is not an option? Is it a product that has got a really, really complicated and long supply chain where it is irreplaceable, let's say? So I think all of those items that, yes, perhaps when I was within AstraZeneca, they were, you could say, within the DNA of the staff. Oh, it's obvious. It's a tablet, so it needs to be moved like that, or it's a liquid, it needs to be moved like that. It's in a glass vial, like let's think there. So it's fragile. You've got to make sure that it is protected from vibration. I think all of those things, Ivan, that perhaps the staff, the colleagues of ours listening in here, that would consider to be obvious on the pharmaceutical, on the manufacturing side, they're probably not so obvious on the logistics, on the transportation side. So don't forget about the little things. And then I think the other thing to say is, from our side now, on the logistics side, we need to similarly convey the items that are important to us. So if I'm thinking about flying product within aircraft, I know when I left and joined Kuehne+Nagel, I was one of the most knowledgeable people within AstraZeneca in terms of air freight and distribution. But as soon as I came into Kuehne+Nagel, I realized that I knew absolutely nothing. So simple things like, if you've got a lower deck pallet, you can't have it over 1.6 meters high. Like simple things like, you've got to make sure that product is protected for variable times of standing on the tarmac. You need to be thinking about, how do you do the consolidation into a sea freight reefer in order to make sure that you use all of the space, but you don't get too close to the sides, because then that can affect the air circulation, which can mean that the temperature can be affected. So I think we need to work together to educate ourselves completely on both sides as to what's important to each other.
I'm most fascinated by how complex and how many variables and levers go into making sure you ship product and it gets there in the right condition and right time. You can't have in a career like you had without seeing some of those things slip through and have some significant fires. I'd love to hear from you. Could you share with me one of the bigger hurdles you faced, whether it was a customer situation that was a challenge, whether it was dealing with a pandemic? What's been a tough test of your career?
I think one of the biggest challenges I've had, which still sticks in my mind, and yes, it precedes the pandemic, you could say it was the first major black swan event that we had, before that black swan word was being used, was the volcanic ash eruption in Iceland. Like you probably, Ivan, was still at school when that happened, but like I was working within AstraZeneca, and I was leading the logistics procurement organization at that time, and I can remember it was a Sunday that it all kicked off. I think I was having breakfast with my wife, and she said, "Have you seen this?" And then we realized through the conversation while we were drinking the coffee that this was a big event, that this was a significant issue that was going to cause me quite a lot of work. So what did I do? What did I make sure that very quickly on that Sunday that worked out well? We need to know where our products are. We need to understand where they are planning to be over the next period, because as you will know, as we've already said, many of the pharmaceuticals are temperature sensitive. Many of them rely on packaging, which will expire if it doesn't get to the endpoint or get into a temperature controlled situation quickly enough. So I sort of formulated in my head, in my mind, what needed to be done in terms of tracking down where the various packages, where the various parcels were. And fortunately, I had a great relationship with both my colleagues within AstraZeneca and the suppliers within the logistics companies that we were running at the time. Yes, again, it precedes WhatsApp, it precedes all of the video conferences and things like we're talking now, but we still had the old mobile phone. So there were many conversations that were had in terms of making sure that we could have everything ready for Monday morning, when clearly the strategic leaders of the company were going to want to know what was happening. So what has that reminded me? it's reminded me, make sure that you are always listening to what is going on, whether it's in the news, whether it's sort of corridor conversations, you could say conversations around the coffee machine, because the most surprising and disconnected item could have an impact upon your professional life. And then the other thing is, don't be scared to act. Like one could have said, well, this is a Sunday, it's a non-working day, we'll wait till Monday. But there's no time like the present. People will actually respect you for taking the initiative, for thinking about items that could have a dramatic effect. And we all know, if you let things go too far, it's a lot harder to come back. So for me, that is the initial black swan event that always sits in my head from 2011. Yes, I think that we were very fortunate that it happened April time, so it wasn't too hot within the Northern Hemisphere. But I keep that in mind with anything that I'm working on in terms of prioritizing for the future.
I think about what it might have been like at that time without all the technology that has evolved and we have available since then. Yet we still got through it, but it was probably a real heavy lift. I'm curious from your perspective, thinking about today and everything we have, customers still face losses, still face lost shipments. If you had a magic wand, what would need to happen today for all that to go away and there be zero loss?
I think now, as you say, at that time you could say we were data naive, weren't we? We had the pen. Okay, you can't see, but we had the pen and paper. We had Excel spreadsheets. We had Word. We did have email, but there wasn't the whole magnitude of data, of information that we've got now. And perhaps you could say, have we got too much data now? Have we got too much information? So I think, coming back to your question as to how do we make sure all of this goes away, we know that all of us on the Kuehne+Nagel side, yourself with PAXAFE, we're involved with digitization. One of the key things that we're doing is we're making sure that every piece is instrumented. Let's say every piece of freight is smart with an IoT sensor. So I think the first thing to say is, we collect all of that information, we collect all of those vital sign points in order that we can have the knowledge, the information, in order to start making those informed decisions. And I think after we've got that, that's where the AI, that's where the next level of intervention, that's where the next level of decision comes in. That clearly, with all of this information, it goes beyond the capability of the human brain, doesn't it? We need the machines to help and support us. So that's where I feel we can now go to help this go away, that we build these decision support systems, we build the data structures that allow us to piece together all of that information in order to spot the negative trends, in order to provide the alerts, the alarms of things that are likely to go wrong. And then they can be provided to the team of experts that can provide the right level of intervention. Because I think if we're thinking of just logistics, it's about moving things. There are always going to be people involved. There are always going to be machinery, and there's going to be aircraft, there's going to be ships, there's going to be trucks involved. So how do we use the technology to bring all of the data together to get to the top of the pyramid, so we can provide those 1, 2, 3, 4 critical alerts and alarms to our capable teams, who can then intervene? And in order for them to be successful, what do they need? What do we need? We need a list of contacts. We need a list of contingency plans that we can follow, that we can put in place 24/7 immediately to correct and heal that issue before it taints, before it fully damages the product.
John, I think that's a great point there that you had at the end, that oftentimes I speak to teams and they miss that last bit of having the actual call tree, the intervention plan. and what to do when the data gives them alarm. They spend a lot of time trying to get alarms and get dots on the map, but they forget that at the end there is a human process where somebody with accountability for the freight at the moment needs to do something to remediate. So I think that's a huge point and a learning that I think folks need to take away. Now, Jon, I want to switch gears here. I think it's a good segue actually around tech to a segment we like to call our lightning round. And I'm going to share a number of technologies and concepts, and I want you to tell me if you're bullish, neutral, or pessimistic on each, and give me a few sentences about why. Does that sound all right?
That sounds great. We'll give it a go. Let's see what happens.
All right. First one, real-time IoT and visibility.
So I think you will guess, Ivan, what I will say here based upon what I've said already. I'm bullish about that. Like, that for me is really, really important. That for me is the way forward. I think the challenge that we have as an industry is how do we get the price point of those devices, of that technology, to a low enough level that we can make every piece of freight in the supply chain smart, and the number of parameters measured equivalent to the parameters that can taint or damage the freight. So we know from a healthcare perspective, it's predominantly temperature. But once we've got that, we will be able to provide the input to the teams that we were discussing that can intervene, can heal the shipments. And what will that do? That will eliminate wastage. That will make sure that the supply chains are really efficient. And I know we've talked about sustainability and we've talked about the planet in the preparation for this, that's good for everybody if everything that is moved appears and is delivered in a quality way so it can be used by the end customer.
Jon, with your perspective on IoT devices, what's your thought on passive data logging? Are they here to stay, or are those throwaway loggers going away for good?
Perhaps I'm of the age where I will say they're here to stay. Like they've been the lifeblood of the industry for a certain period of time. And I suppose, where am I? I haven't seen the price point of the active loggers drop as fast as I expected. So I believe that there will always be some more commoditized, lower value products that require some, let's say, high level health monitoring. And a passive logger is a great way of doing that. If you just need the recipient of the goods to understand, is it thumbs up, I can use it, or is it thumbs down, I can't use it, as effectively a digital switch. So it might be something about a tilt monitor that you probably don't need to have an active logger to do that. You just need something to say, yes, it's being transported horizontal or vertical, whichever way it needs to be done. And that's it, that's good enough.
All right, now you mentioned sustainability a moment ago, but what are your thoughts? Is it a check mark do you think that customers have to do, or is it something that folks really want to see the industry move the needle on?
I'm a little bit more pessimistic about sustainability. Personally, I love nature, I love the planet, and I'm sad to see the impact on the planet of climate change, whether that be the floods, whether that be the severe hardship and disruption to peoples in certain countries, whether that be glaciers melting. So I passionately, personally want us to do something about it. But what I'm not sure is, in terms of business and the professional world, have we yet found the right balance between government legislation, the government priorities, what the shareholders are expecting in terms of return from the companies, and the environmental problem that all of this generates. So I don't think quite there is the tipping point just yet in terms of the favor of the planet and the environment and sustainability. Hopefully it will come soon, but who knows?
Right. Yeah, I'm with you there. Hopefully it comes soon, and it's one of those things where, you know, everyone's doing their part, and if we don't, it's gonna come to the priority sooner than later. One more here is Gen AI and temperature control logistics. Is it a fad, or do you think it's ready for prime time now?
I would say I'm middle of the road there. I think we're getting ready for prime time. So we've started discussing IoT, or we've been discussing IoT sensors. We've been discussing the instrumentation of all of the pieces. We haven't quite got all of the, let's say, the puzzle pieces of the data collection in place, the data quality right, in my opinion. And then beyond that, we haven't quite got the way that all of this data can bubble up into the cloud in order to be actionable. So I think there's a little bit more, what could you say, foundational setup that needs to be done in order that we can get the right data in the right place with the right description behind it. Once we've got that, it will be a way, because clearly in terms of the machines, in terms of the algorithms to analyze that data, there's an awful lot of that out there. We know it's going on in many other parts of the world already. So it's coming. I guess that it will probably come faster than I could imagine, and I would believe, but no, I don't think we're quite there just yet.
Well, so much has changed in just almost the last 12 or 18 months with respect to AI and how it's changing many industries. Our listeners love to hear what people think is next. So 2 years from now, what innovations, what trends do you think will be shaping the cold chain industry?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because as you say, the gradient, the speed of change is so tall, is so fast. If we're bringing it to logistics, to transportation, I don't believe that we will get to the point where we will be, let's say, concocting or brewing the medication within our own houses. So what does that mean? That means that transportation is here to stay. So I don't see the major modes of transportation, air, road, and sea, varying. Yes, we know drones are appearing more and more. So probably there will be more direct to patient, direct to consumer using drones. I know some of the technology companies are already trying that in certain parts of the world. So that physical part, I don't think will change. Also, I don't think the laws of physics and thermodynamics can't change either. So the requirement for temperature control, the requirement to protect the product in transit will remain. So therefore, I think the biggest change is going to have to be in the data space. So it's going to be along the lines of what we've been talking about already. What could that be? That could be optimizing the routes that we're using. That could be optimizing the packaging so that we can send more product with less fuel being burnt within the transportation that we're using. It could be that we're able to make sure that things are just handled more perfectly. There's less waste. So I think it's an efficiency game play. It's an improvement in capability rather than a fundamental change.
John, we've got about a minute left. So before we wrap up, we'd love to hear what we call our logistics legend story, a time where you or a colleague went above and beyond to get the job done. Can you share with us a memorable story?
So I think I've given my memorable story in terms of what I did when the volcanic eruption happened, like and why was I thinking that was part of the legend? That was part of the legend because it is a while ago. I think that the thing that for me comes out of all of that in terms of what could help the audience, what could help people, is what's most important for me about what I do and why is that a legend story. It's about making decisions. Like what did I describe there? That I collected all of the data. I then assessed that data, and I think I would say best to make a decision than none at all. And but what does one need to do? One needs to make sure that you've got a timescale in mind. So with that logistics legend story in terms of the volcanic eruption, I knew that I'd got to get something done by the end of Sunday. So let's get all of the data together. Let's make sure that it's very clear in terms of what can be done, what can't be done. Yes, understand the risks, do a risk assessment, but act quickly in order to mean that things are protected, things can move forward.
John, I love that story, and it shows the criticality of what you said. when there's an issue, it's the speed of action is a lot better than too much analysis paralysis. So well done on that, Jon. And with that, that's one cool wrap for FrostBytes. Jon, thank you for being here and for all the wisdom you've shared with us. To our listeners, we'd like to thank you for continuing to tune in. Don't forget to subscribe and stay connected for more insights from leaders in cold chain and logistics. So until next time, thank you.
And thank you.